All right, so this is the second episode on the new YouTube channel. I got Sean Conley here. He's a former Pitt Panthers kicker, ex-NFL player, best-selling author, world-renowned yoga instructor, all that good stuff. So I'm super honored and humbled to have you on. So it's funny because I wanted to mention how we linked up. So on Twitter, well, let me back up. The first episode that I did was with Mike Adams. And then like 2 weeks after I dropped that episode, I got a follow from you. And I messaged you like probably within 2 minutes. I'm like, I got to have him on. So I find out later that Mike and you know each other from yoga. And it was like, wow, this is like kind of like fate. I have to have him on now. So that's how that happened. But I read your book, The Point After. I listened to it on audiobook. I liked it so much. I got to get the hard copy. It's seriously, it was good stuff.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I just like your path to the NFL was so extremely unique and interesting and very inspirational to me as somebody who's like, you know, kind of trying to start my own thing and I'm trying to find my path. Reading your book actually kind of helped me find my path a little bit. So I want to thank you for that. It was very inspirational, the book. I'm super happy I read it. And I think everybody should go out and buy it right now.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you. I'm so glad that you found something you connected to. That was the hope for the book. So that's you made my day.
So I guess my first question is writing the book. First of all, it's been 2 years now, so congratulations on that. But how long did it take to write the book?
Yeah, it actually took almost 10 years. I started writing it. Yeah, I guess about 12 years ago, and just I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. I just started to just like write my story. It was my first intention behind the book was to make it kind of like a yoga meditation book, and like with my football stories interwoven. But what happened was when I got like 5 years into the book, I gave it to my editor, and she said, "No, you need to take out all this like yoga stuff and just focus on the football story, because there's so many like lessons in there that people could relate to." So I had to start over completely. And then, so then it was another like 4 or 5 years of writing. And then once I got a publisher, then there was even more editing. So it was like a 12-year process, but it was so fun in so many ways, because I got to go back in memory lane, and I reached out to all kinds of, players that I played with and coaches, because I want to make sure I had the story as accurate as possible. And also just help me like relive, some of the, my experience with my father passing away, that I never really kind of went through that whole experience. I kind of just like stuffed that down. So, writing my story was just a very like a therapeutic way to deal with all that. So it was nice.
That's awesome. So in the book, and I'm not going to get into like too much of the book, because I really do want people to go out and buy this. I don't want to, no spoilers. Like this is, you have to read this book. Seriously, anybody who's listening, it's great. So the only thing I will say from the book, because I think it's worth sharing with people who might watch this and who struggle with ADD or have ADD and need some sort of story to kind of uplift them. You were diagnosed with ADD as a young child, and I don't have ADD, so like as an outsider, hearing that and seeing what you went through to get to the NFL, for example, like your high school, they didn't have a football team, but you knew you wanted to be a football player. To me, like it almost seems that the diagnosis of ADD was almost a blessing and a curse, because while it might be traumatizing to be that young and hear that you have something wrong with you, you're being told, or you have this diagnosis that's like a cloud over your head, like something's wrong with me. But that same thing is driving you so hard to accomplish something that you want so bad, to the point where you're not even playing high school football, but you want to make it to the NFL, and you're like, nothing is going to stop you. So am I correct in that assumption that do you credit ADD to getting, living out your dreams later in life?
Yeah, exactly. That was so beautiful the way you put it. Yeah, 100% I do. And it was, like you said, like it was a blessing and a curse. So where my ADD would be tough for me would be, for example, if like at a part of my football career, I was struggling, I could become very self-destructive about, like, like, that you're not a good kicker, you're a failure, you have to work harder. But the blessing was, like, anytime I had any sort of challenge, because I was so focused at a very young age, I knew by like age 8, when I was 8, I already wanted to be an NFL football player. So like, whenever something would go like, or not go my way, I would just keep going, because in my mind, it was just like, you're going to play in the NFL, you're going to play in the NFL. And, it was strange going through high school, because sometimes I would share with my friends that I was going to play in the NFL someday, and they would laugh at me. And, I look back and it makes total sense. Like you said, I didn't play high school football, but like, what I discovered through all that is how important it is to have self-belief. And, it's great to have mentors and, other people who believe in you along your journey. But I think that's what ultimately drove me, was this inner belief I had in what I could do. And I actually, I owe a lot of that to my ADD, like you said.
So you didn't have a high school football team, and you played soccer instead. And you look to guys like Morton Anderson in the NFL as inspiration. The guy played 1 year of high school football.
Right. Yep.
And so you kind of tried to model your path to the NFL, watching some of these kickers the way they did it without playing high school football. And as somebody who, like, I'm a draft like fanatic. I love the NFL draft. I love like watching college players, prospect profiles and all that stuff. And you never hear that. Like, that's something you never hear, is no high school football. Like, that's so rare. And so as reading this book, I'm like, this guy's insane. Like, he's not playing high school football, and he's trying to walk on. And I'm like, I'm thinking, and it's probably going through your mind too, like, what university is going to want me with no resume and no tape? So you go to Grove City College, D3 school in Pennsylvania, and it doesn't work out there. And you decide that you're gonna keep pursuing your dream, and you get your shot at Gannon. And things still they're not trending towards the NFL when you get done at Gannon. And then the whole path to Pitt, like, it blows my mind that you transfer from Gannon as a senior. So you're missing out on your senior year because of the NCAA rules.
Right.
So now you're a 5th-year senior. You're buried on the depth chart because you have 3 kickers ahead of you on scholarship, and you're still determined to make it. What was going through your mind, like, through the whole, if you can just sum up that experience in college in just a few sentences, or take as much time as you want, but just what was going through your mind in college?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing that went through my mind the whole time was just, I didn't want to have leave anything on the table, so to speak, or I didn't want to have any regrets in terms of how much effort I put in to go into the NFL. And that's why when I was at Gannon, I played there for 2 years, and my timing was really good, because they hadn't had a football team in about 50 years, since like World War II. And so they were just taking anybody, which was great. And so that was perfect for me, because I was like basically like a nobody with no high school kicking experience. But my 2 years there, I think I was like maybe 5 out of 16. It was very inaccurate, but I had a strong leg, and I knew I only had one more year. And, at the time I was just thinking like, this is it. Like, you only go to college once. And I figured I'd rather go to Pitt. And even though I was going to be buried on the depth chart, I'd rather like just fall flat on my face trying, versus like, living with like, well, what if and all that stuff, if I just, stayed at Gannon Division III school, where I knew I wouldn't get any look. And I just didn't want to live with that sort of regrets. I figured I'd just, make that move to Pitt. And, Pitt at the time wasn't like the best choice for me, because like you said, they had those kickers on scholarship. I actually, this is back in the day when, you could go to the magazine store, and like you'd find all your information in magazines. There was like nothing online. So I had to sift through all the rosters of players. I would look for teams that had kickers who were seniors and had like bad years. So because I just figured I wanted my best chance, and Pitt had 3 guys, and they had good kickers. So, but it just turned out like that was like the only school that would even give me the chance to walk on. And so I figured if I just had a chance, maybe it could work. And I got really lucky. One of my biggest breaks was they had a brand new special teams coach, and his name's Amos Jones, who's coaching the NFL now. He's been coaching forever. I think he's with the Giants now, and he also was new like me. So he was from the University of Alabama. He used to coach for Bear Bryant, and he was like a fish out of the water because at the time, back in the 90s, schools were more regional. The players were more regional. The coaches were more regional. And so he was like this fish out of the water as well, being from Alabama. And so I think that's what really helped us gravitate together. So he could care less about the other players and the experience they had. He was just going to go to whoever was the best kicker. And luckily I was able to prove that to him by about half an hour before the kickoff of our first game against the Kent State Golden Flashes.
I'm so happy that you brought up Amos Jones because that was one of my questions I had in my mind. I'm like a positional coach freak. I'm more of like it's an infatuation, more like a neurosis. Like when I watch football, like 25% of the reason I watch football is to watch the sidelines because positional coaches, they make me laugh. Like, you see a kick returner taking a kickoff back for a touchdown and just like the sideline, the coach is just freaking out. I love that part of football. And Amos Jones, to me, he spent some time in Pittsburgh. I think that's where he got to start in the NFL.
Yep.
But Amos, like when he was in Pittsburgh, he's got that Southern twang.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, to me as an outsider, he's very like blue collar, pull your boots up, like, no nonsense type of coach. And I love that. It feels so Pittsburgh. Like he feels like Pittsburgh, and he's coached since the early 80s. I think he has like over 40 years in now. That's insane. So somebody who has that kind of experience coaching, I need to hear like one Amos Jones story that the fans would want to hear, or me selfishly, because I just love positional coaches.
Oh, wow. Yeah. There's just so many. Well, he had so many lines that I just never heard of that, I remember there was a kicker who thought he should be playing more. And he said, what did he say to him? He said something like, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. Like he just like things like when you're like a 20-year-old kid, like, like where do they come from? But he just, stuff just came out of his mouth that sounded so natural. I remember when he named me the starter. And, I asked him like, why did you name me the starter or whatever? And he just said, the other kickers couldn't hold your doggone jock strap. I mean, just this stuff that just comes out of nowhere. But what was so cool about him is he always told stories. One of the best stories that I heard from him is this was back to my ADD. I spent a lot of time video analysis of my kicks, like in practice. And so one time after practice, I was up in his office, replaying a video of myself kicking where I was like missing, like my plant foot was in the wrong spot. And I was, like a shank and over again. And he came in and he yelled at me to stop. He's like, you spend way too much time focusing on like your mistakes. You need to spend 95% of your time watching film of you like hitting the ball perfectly. And then he started going into this whole huge story because he always had to tell me that he coached and played for Paul Bear Bryant, which I totally understand. But he always would precede the story like, well, when I coached for Paul Bear Bryant, he tells this story. He says like after games, the Bear would bring the whole team into the main auditorium. And he said for about 5 minutes, he would show them, hey, we need to get better here. We need to get better here. But he said the rest of the video to the players was all their successes. It was basically, he said, like a highlight reel, because he said Paul Bear Bryant was all about like positive imagery. And he says like, that's what he would try to drive into the players' heads, was to see these plays over and over again. And he said that was like his big inspiration. And then for me as a kicker, then that's what I started to do in my career going forward is yes, try to get better and work on all the little things, but at the same time, like not forget of like, hey, this is what you do well, and just get that in your head to really help with the mental game. Because really, back in the 90s, there wasn't much talk about the mental game, but Amos Jones, Paul Bear Bryant, or the Bear, there's so many coaches that were ahead of their time with that. And Amos was definitely one of them. I think that's why he's been in the league for as long as he has. One of the reasons.
Yeah, it has to be that Bear Bryant philosophy. I've heard that before from other players, interviews and stuff about Bear Bryant. He's very like positive, positive mindset type of guy. Don't focus on the mistakes. That's awesome. So you spend your year at Pitt as a fifth-year senior, and the NFL draft comes and goes. You don't get selected in the draft. You get a call from Kevin Colbert, who was the director of pro scouting, I believe, for the Lions. Most recently, the general manager for the Steelers, who just retired.
Unbelievable career.
When you got that call from Kevin Colbert, like, what were the emotions like? Because you, against all odds, like, this is the craziest story I've ever heard. Against all odds, from middle school to this point in your career, getting that call, what went through your mind?
Yeah, it was amazing because when he called me, that the draft had just ended, and my agent, I had a bunch of workouts before the draft with the Giants, the Patriots, a handful of other teams, and so a lot of teams told my agent, like, hey, like, if your guy's still there, like, we're going to draft him. And there was a lot of teams that needed kickers that year, so I was waiting. I think for the Giants, they said, you're our number 3 kicker out of the 3, and if you're still available, we'll take you. And there was a couple kickers taken. So I thought, like, mathematically, I was going to get drafted. And so in the later rounds, but then once it ended, I thought it was it. I thought it was over. I really didn't know much about how the whole free agency thing thought, like, growing up, like, I watched the draft and that's it. And so I thought it was over because, there used to be 12 rounds. And so they went to 7. So, but I was down in the dumps and ready to just, I don't know what, somehow move on, maybe look at like the Arena Football League or something. And the phone rings, and it's Kevin Colbert, and he immediately offers me a contract. And, so I went from like complete bottom to like sky high. And then the crazy thing is, once I hung up with Kevin Colbert, the Steelers called and the Arizona Cardinals called right after that. So I was like, oh man, it's like when it rains, it pours. But after giving it some more thought, and then I had to work out with the Steelers, and Bill Cowher gave me some good advice, I ended up signing with Detroit, which worked out perfectly.
So when you got to Detroit, Jason Hanson was there, spent 21 years with the Detroit Lions, all pro. I believe he was 3 years into his career when you got there, and he was like, he's Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever do it. So you get there, and Hanson's obviously the guy. They just gave him a contract. They're set at kicker, and they bring you in. And I just need to know how it was competing with somebody like Hanson, because he's got to be looking at you like he's here to take my job. But was he that way? Because I hear a lot of players are, and then some players are very helpful and they're encouraging. What kind of player was he like to you?
Yeah, actually, Jason was great. The situation there, it was a pretty comfortable one, because he like you mentioned, he was one of the top kickers in the league at that time. He was actually the highest paid. I think he was making like $725, which at the time was the highest for any kicker. And because he just signed the contract, they weren't looking for anyone. I was there in case like he got hurt or just struggled enormously, which was highly unlikely. And by giving him rest, they also made, they said to me, hey, we're going to give you like lots of reps. So that was one of the reasons why I signed with Detroit, because I knew I'd get film, and film for a rookie is invaluable. So I had a very relaxed relationship with him, because I was more or less like helping him whenever he needed a break. Where things got a lot more uncomfortable was my next 2 stops when I signed with the Indianapolis Colts and the Jets, where they flat out, when they signed me, were like, we want you to be the guy. We want you to unseat the kicker we have now, because he's, they didn't say this because he's how much money he's been making, but how long he's been in the league and how he was struggling. Because those 2 places that I went to, those kickers were coming off some bad years, and they're like in their mid 30s. So when I went there was immediate like tension that I could feel. And then like with kickers, it's difficult because there's only 2 of you, like in training camp. Quarterbacks, it can be like a bigger quarterback room. It can be more relaxed, but like the kicker, it's pretty obvious, and you're always with each other. So that's what makes it a little strange.
And I wanted to touch on that too. Like with kicking, it's very you miss the field goal or you make the field goal. There's no room for error. You make it, you're a hero. You miss it, you're the worst guy on the team immediately. You could be the most loved or the most hated in a matter of just 5 seconds. How long does it take to kick a field goal? So did that ever mess with you? Was there a field goal that you kicked that you made and felt an extreme high, or a field goal that you missed and you felt an extreme low? Because I've heard kickers talk about, they they might go 17 for 17, and then that 18th field goal is a game winner in the Super Bowl, and they blow it, and it leads to depression, and you snowball. Did you ever feel anything like that?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I felt that a handful of times, and for the most part, it was like it was earlier in my career, and then as I went, like you once you've missed one and then you've made one, you can kind of build like resilience, I guess you could say. But probably like my biggest low was when I was early in my senior year with the University of Pittsburgh, and I had missed 2 kicks in a row. And because I was this outsider, this walk-on, I knew I had a short leash. So that was like a really big low for me, because I missed an extra point against West Virginia. And then the next week we're playing ESPN or on ESPN. Like this is when they only had like the Thursday night game of the weekend when there wasn't that many games on. And, I missed one against Rutgers. And that was a big low for me, because I knew if I missed the next one, like that was it. But luckily I had Amos Jones at my back, because the head coach, Paul Hackett, wanted to yank me. And I overheard their conversation. I was reading lips, and then Amos Jones said, no, he's fine. Let him have one more chance. So that was like my big low, because I was like, wow, the head coach is done with me. But about 10 minutes later in the game, I get another chance. This one's from 44 yards, and I make it. And so I went from like probably the lowest point in my career to the highest. And I think I learned a lot in that lesson to not get so, down on myself. And also I figured like that for me was like a more high pressure kick than I had if I had like a last second kick. Cause like this one, my job was like truly on the line. So that really helped me like move forward. But it's definitely tough for kickers, because we can really put like our identity in just one made or missed kicked. And the kickers who can stay more even keel can, generally have like longer careers. Cause a lot of times when kickers miss kicks, it's just something weird, that just, they doink it off the upright, or there's some wind. There's a lot of things that are out of their, of course, being a kicker, I give excuses, but like that's out of their control. That it's not that they're a bad kicker. It just didn't go their way. And once they miss a couple and the pressure builds, that can really spiral them downward.
So did you have any superstitions? Because I read in the book that Welcome to the Jungle was something that you listened to by Guns N' Roses before every single game. Was there anything else that you did like during a game, like to help you make the kick, or mentally prepare you?
Yeah. Definitely Guns N' Roses before a game. But one of my biggest superstitions was a T-shirt that I wore that was the Duke versus Canisius basketball game that my friend gave me like when I was in high school. And for whatever reason, I wore that. It was disgusting. It had like yellow armpits and tears, but I wore it during one of my tryouts with the University of Pittsburgh during spring ball, and I had a really good practice. So after that, I wore it every day after every game. And I don't know why I did that, but like, kickers will do stuff like that. But like during the game, I just try to stay away from the players as much as possible, because it's so easy to get like distracted. So I just kind of hovered around the kicker's net and just just try to stay my own space. But sometimes that wouldn't work, and sometimes I'd feel like socialization is a little bit better. But I never really had any sort of routine. But because I enjoyed watching the game so much, so I think sometimes kickers, when you spend too much time by the net off to the side, you're not part of it. I always, as a kicker, I always felt that I really wasn't all that much part of the team. So I always want to be more. So I just like love watching the game, sometimes to the point where I'd forget like, oh shit, we're like in field goal range. But I just love watching the talent. Like when I was at the University of Pittsburgh, we had like Alex Van Peltz and players like that. In the NFL too, I did the same thing. I just love watching the game like I do now.
So you mentioned your dad a lot in the book, and he was a Notre Dame football fan. You grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, a very Catholic town.
Mm-hmm.
And so naturally you were a Notre Dame fan. And one of your biggest games in college, your senior year, your fifth year, was against Notre Dame, and you had a really good game. And I think it's kind of like symbolic, or it's like kind of foreshadowing almost. Like you went through all these trials and tribulations to get to this point, and you're playing in the biggest game of your career, and it just happens to be against a team that has significance and ties to your family. And I could only imagine how proud your dad was of you in that moment. Was there pressure on you, or were you just happy? Like, because having your parents in the stands watching you kick field goals against, your favorite team growing up. I guess what was going through your mind in that moment? Like, were you thinking about your parents at that moment?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. That was probably by far and away my best experience at the University of Pittsburgh. It was, yeah, because growing up like Notre Dame fan, like on Saturday mornings, it was Notre Dame football. And so for the big part of my life, I just wanted to play for Notre Dame, and then being able to play them at Pitt, yeah, with my parents there, because Erie is just, yeah, like as you mentioned, like a huge Catholic town and huge football town. So you put the football and the Catholic together, and my father was Irish, and so like it was Notre Dame, and so, but it was strange. I remember playing that game, like, because even though it was Notre Dame, it sounds cliche, but it was just like another game and just another kick. And I think, like once the season gets rolling, all that other stuff just kind of just goes to the side. But there was definitely like the significance of, about like the emotional part about beating Notre Dame. But I think at that point in the season, we're a handful of games in, I was just like pretty focused, and like, we were struggling too as a team at that point too. So we just, everyone just like wanted to do our job. And so, I was able to like to block out like all the emotion, but like, but I had a really good game. So I was able to look back and like, wow, I'm very thankful that it went the way that it did, because that was the game that, and I never found this out till later, but Kevin Colbert was actually in the stands that game. And, because when he signed me, he let me know, like, hey, I was at that game. I was like, wow, like, it's just like, I had no idea. I knew there was a lot of scouts that day because they had the bus, they had Jerome Bettis, and there were so many stars on that game. So we knew that there was a lot of NFL scouts, and some of the players saw them before the game and all their gear. So, but yeah, Kevin Colbert was there, which was made it even better. So more ironic.
Yeah, that team was stacked. That was 93, or was that
92? Yep.
92. Yeah, Lou Holtz was there. Yeah, that was good. That was prime Notre Dame football. That would have been awesome. So you go to the Lions after your career at Pitt, and you get to play with Barry Sanders. And what was that like? Do you have any Barry Sanders stories for us? Like, any conversations with him worth sharing?
Yeah, it was the craziest thing, because like when I first got to training camp, I looked at all these players as just like superhuman, growing up watching them on TV. And then once you spend like a few days at training camp, you realize that they're not much different than you. They just, they want to be healthy, they want to be happy, and the most interesting thing about Barry Sanders was how down to earth he was. Where it was maybe a week into training camp, and he starts walking over to me, because before practice would start, the players would go out by before the actual, the whistle blew, and you could just warm up however you wanted to. And he came over to me, he starts strutting over, and, I see his big giant thighs, like the size of tree trunks. He says, "Hey, you want to play catch?" And I'm like, "Well, of course." I'm like, "Wow, this is like Barry Sanders wants to play catch with me." This 22-year-old rookie kicker, which was so out of the norm. So yeah, that became like our routine. So I'd play catch with Barry Sanders throughout the whole training camp, for 6 weeks. And, I don't know why, but the more I got to know him during training camp, he was just that type of player. He wasn't into the limelight. And, when you drive into practice, you'd see all these Mercedes and BMWs all souped up. And then, Barry Sanders would drive in with his like base model Acura. He was there just to like do his job, and just a really good, humble guy. So it wasn't that surprising that he retired early like he did. And he could have easily been the all-time NFL leading rusher, but he was ready. He was done.
Yeah, Barry was amazing. I mean, probably the craziest college tape I've ever watched in my life. I mean, the guy was absolutely, that's awesome that you got to play with that guy.
And only one big time offer, Oklahoma State. Everyone else thought he was too small.
Yeah, there's so many comparisons to you and Barry as far as like path to the NFL, and even getting to the NFL. You both retired early, and I think some of the book kind of ties that together. Like, Barry might have had some sort of influence on that decision. And you looked at somebody like Barry Sanders, who's the best in the world at what he does, and he's valuing his health, and he's valuing his safety and family over the rushing record. And that in itself is probably very influential to you.
Right. Yeah, totally. We were playing a exhibition game against the Cowboys in London. And on one of the first nights I went out with all the rookies, came rolling in around like 2-3 a.m. He's sitting in the lobby reading, I don't know, like a Stephen King novel. And we were chatting for a little bit. And I told him I was worried about training camp cuts coming up in a couple of weeks. And he said, "Hey, one thing you got to remember is there's more to life than the NFL," which ended up being like my subtitle for the book. But it was crazy because when he told me that, and he's Barry Sanders, like I didn't believe him. Like, what do you mean there's more to life than the NFL? There isn't. Like, this is like the best. But he was maybe 4 or 5 years in the NFL, and he had already figured things out. And most NFL players that I interacted with is when their careers ended, they like myself, struggle with identity because from a very young age, playing a sport, thinking this is what you can do and this is who you are when it ends. And for 99% of football players, we all can't be like Tom Brady. It's not going to end on their own terms. And for me, it didn't end on my own terms, and for a lot of players as well. And that's, can be really, really difficult. And so when he told me that, I didn't absorb it. And so I had to go through the process myself the hard way, but somehow along the road, Barry figured that out.
So as a kicker, do you have to deal with trash talk? Like, how much trash talk? Because I see it every Sunday. It's like every time there's a kick goes up, there's a lineman chirping. Like, how much did you have to deal with that? Did it happen in practice as well?
Yeah. The funny thing is like, it would happen in practice, and it would actually make me laugh more than anything because they'd be like, yell at him, swear at him, and, throw stuff at him. But like, they're your teammates. So when they do it, it's so hard to like not like laugh inside. And then when it would happen in the games, it would be so loud in the stadium that you really wouldn't even hear it. So, but most of the pressure I feel for kickers is just like what's going on in your head. Justin Tucker was on 60 Minutes the other day, did this awesome thing about kickers, and he said 90% of kicking is mental, and the other 10% is mental. And it's so true because like once you get to that level of the NFL, there's not much difference physically. I mean, you certainly have like your freaks of nature kickers, like your Morton Andersons and your Justin Tuckers, but for the most part, you line up all these other kickers and they're all pretty much the same in terms of leg strength, accuracy. But what's going on between the ears, like that's the difference for most of these kickers.
So now that you're away from the game, you've moved on to a new path, a new career. You're a yoga instructor. You're a best-selling author now. Do you still watch football? Are you still a fan of football?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a huge Pitt football fan. Season tickets, go to all the games, and just love Pitt football. And for the NFL, for me, I watch it, but I'm a fan of the game, because I spent time with the Jets, the Colts, the Lions. Grew up a Cleveland Browns fan. I'm now here in Pittsburgh. It's great. I can just sit back and watch, not really have a specific rooting interest. I'll root for the underdogs. I'll root for former Pitt football players like Kenny Pickett. I'm excited to watch him play this year. So for me, it's just watching the game. I love all the storylines. I love all the crazy drama that happens. So I just watch it just for entertainment and love the sport. And I certainly watch it for the kickers too. But growing up, I was a diehard Cleveland Browns fan. So if they lost on Sunday, the rest of my day was ruined. My dad would go up to his room and he'd cry. And so I grew up in this football is everything house. We would drive to bars in Ohio to watch the Browns play if they weren't on TV, because we'd get the Bills instead. So, and man, I just grew up in this love of football that I still have. But luckily for me, I don't have that emotional, oh shit, my team lost. So it's really nice it's just to watch it and enjoy it and take it in.
So, you played for Pitt and you're a big Pitt Panthers fan now. So I got to ask you, because, I asked Mike this too. He was part of the Tattoo 5. So it was very relevant, the NIL stuff that's going on. You guys just had Jordan Addison went to USC on a pretty big deal. What is your take on the NIL as far as being a Pitt fan, seeing a guy kind of get recruited away from your university? Because it's easy to stand back and, I like the idea of the NIL. I think it's 100% fair and reasonable that players who are putting their body on the line every single day for a university capitalizing, making millions of dollars on this player's interest, it's only right to give it back to the players who are making you the money. I, of course, 100% believe that. But when you see another university swoop in and kind of recruit a guy away, what do you think? What do you think needs refined, if you think anything at all? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And I'm with you. I 100%, like the players need to be paid, like Kenny Pickett all these years here at Pitt with his, like everyone's wearing a Pickett jersey in the stands, but he's not getting a dime. So I'm so glad that, that they have the NIL. It's just, unfortunately, I think right now it's like the wild, wild west. And what I'd love to see college football, and it's just, the animals are out of the barn, but the beauty of the NFL is the fact that like the Green Bay Packers in a small market can like play in the Super Bowl. The Pittsburgh Steelers can have the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Like they just in 1 year, they can go from the bottom to the top. And with college football right now, you got the same few teams every year that are near the top. And you see a school like Pitt, and there's a bunch of schools like Pitt, that are in that realm or that level when I talk about where they can just like develop players, but they can't, they don't have the same resources as like an Alabama or Ohio State. And so that's, if I just would love to see college football somehow, make more of an even playing field. I just don't know how they're going to do it because, like I said, the animals are out of the barn, but like, now we have UCLA and USC in the Big Ten. So we're going to have like UCLA versus Rutgers, and these like a 5-hour plane ride, for a game. And it's just crazy. And I think college football in some ways is destroying itself. And, the regional rivalries is what made football so good. And I don't feel like I'm some old guy saying like, get off my lawn, but like the more this keeps going in this direction, then yeah, college football is going to be great for maybe like 1/3 of the big schools, but what about for the Oregon States, the Washington States, and, et cetera. So, there wasn't a time too long ago where Colorado played for the national championship, and it would be nice to see that again, but I just don't know how they're going to get there at this point because it's going the opposite direction.
I'm 100% with you. I think it's very new, so we got to work the kinks out. We got to see where it goes. The first couple of years are going to be rough, just figuring it out as everything else is. But yeah, I mean, part of the reason I love college football is the regional matchup. I mean, like Penn State, Maryland, all these regional games, it's just going to be one big mosh pit now. And it's like, I don't know. I think that there needs to be some sort of regulation as far as, because remember, like the NIL is name and likeness. It's not let me buy this player from this team to bring him over here.
Right. It's not pay for play, right? Which is it's turned into exactly.
That's something completely different. That's like what college football has been doing for lots of years already, but we're just kind of talking about it now because it's like there's a bigger loophole now that we can get away with, and we can just put NIL under the article, and then everybody's like, oh, okay. But yeah, I think like just watching Jordan Addison, the way that, because I was so excited to see him play, just being local, it was. I'm not even a Pitt fan. I'll admit I'm a Penn State fan, but watching him, the way he left, I was like, oh man, that sucks for Pitt football.
Yeah, and I think what happened too is I'm pretty sure this is how it went. Is Pitt might have been the only Power 5 school that recruited him as a wide receiver, and then they developed him. I mean, he was like a no name, and now he's like Blitnikoff Award. And so Pitt does all the developing, and now USC just says, okay, we'll take him. And, and it's USC took players from like Oklahoma, the same thing. So it's like, no one's like immune now. It's almost as when Kelly went to LSU. So like even Notre Dame can lose their coach down Oklahoma to USC. Like it's just become, it's crazy.
It's a disaster. It's great for the player though. Like I'm happy for Jordan.
For sure.
He's probably where he wants to be, and he's making lots of money, and that's great. He should be making lots of money. I mean, players who are putting their body on the line, they should be paid. It would be silly.
Yeah, absolutely.
That it's gone on this long, and
right. And absolutely, and even if they're a first round draft choice, they're still not a guarantee to have an NFL career. So if they can get it, I'm glad they're getting it. It would just be nice if there's some sort of okay, rules and regulations so it can be a little bit more even, but it's just, I don't know if they'll ever get that. Even if they have that you're still going to have your haves and your have nots.
Right, for sure. So you played with the Lions, and then after your exit with the Lions, you went to the Colts was the next stop, correct? You went to Indianapolis after you played for Detroit.
Yep.
How much time off did you have between leaving Detroit and getting to Indianapolis?
Yeah, about 6 months. So when I got cut by Detroit, I had a few workouts, like when kickers needed, or teams needed a kicker during the season if he was struggling. So I went in for a few tryouts mid-season, and then I just waited to the Super Bowl. And as soon as the Super Bowl is over, that's, it's now free agent time. So, luckily I signed with the Colts, and kind of a crazy story how that happened. My father called me up one day because my agent wasn't working out, and I was starting to make my own phone calls. He said, "Hey, do you want me to go down and see my friend? He works at a gas station up in Erie, and he's friends with the special teams coach, Tom Batta, in Indianapolis." I'm like, "What do you mean, Dad? You can go down to the gas station?" So I'm like, well, at this point, like I hadn't had an offer to come back into to sign with anybody. So it's just, sure, go ahead. About a week later, I get a phone call from Tom Batta, the Indianapolis Colts. He's like, "Hey, come in for a workout." So I didn't even ask him how he found out, whatever. I just took it. But he said, the only thing is, like, you have to pay for all your expenses. You have to drive here on your own money, fly here, hotel, everything. Because we already have a kicker that we're bringing in that we're probably going to sign. So I knew at this point, I was just kind of like a throw-in with this guy, my dad's friend, Mr. Monday of V&M Arco gas station. So I get there, and, luckily I had a really good workout, and I outkicked him. Then afterwards, I see Ted Marchibroda come walking over, and I'm like, "Oh, this is good. This is a good sign." And, they gave me a check to pay for my hotel, and they gave me some gas money. My wife was with me. She was pregnant. They're like, "Hey, here's some money, like, to go out to dinner." And, no, I knew that was it. That was it. Like a week later, they signed me and brought me in. And this is when I had my first real chance to make an NFL roster long-term, because their kicker was 34 years old. Dean Biasucci had a few bad years. And so that was my, one of my, the Jets too, but it was a pretty close brush to, like, finally breaking through.
What little fun fact about Tom Batta, he grew up like 20 minutes down the road from me in Warren.
Oh, no way.
He went to Warren Harding, and he ended up, he played at Kent, I believe, Kent State.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. And he was a lifer like Amos Jones. These special teams coaches, they're crazy. I mean, they coach for decades, a lot of them, and they just go from team to team. They just bounce the, special teams for the Rams, and they'll go to the Colts. They just bounce around, and they're their own breed. They're some interesting cats.
So after your career, your NFL career wrapped up, you retired early. It was a hip flexor, right?
Yeah, it was mainly, hip flexor and back that were the shot. And, that goes back to my ADD. I train way too much. I was like a perfectionist. Like I before I'd go kick, I'd like plan out how many times I'd kick. So I'd say like 10 from this hash, 10 from this hash. So even I had like a number that I would try to complete, which didn't make any sense, because I should have been like more intuitive, like, hey, that's enough. I'm feeling good. So whenever I work with young kickers now, I always, talk to them about this or whatever. But I met Gary Anderson, the Steelers kicker, and this is going into my second year of the career, and my second season. I called him up and said, "Hey, you want to get together and kick?" He's like, "Kick? I don't kick until training camp starts." I was like, "Wait, really?" And so that was like my first like sign, like, or like maybe I should like back off a little bit. So he would, like, when the season would end in January, he would even start kicking footballs till August. So by the time I started to like back off like that, I'd already done so much damage to my leg and hip that I was toast. So, but
so your wife got you into yoga, and you credit her in the book for a lot of your the pain that you were having has kind of been, I don't know, I'll let you speak for yourself, but it sounded like it's almost healed now. Did you have to have any sort of surgeries, or was this all cured through yoga?
Yeah, it was all yoga, because my injury was like overuse when I was playing in the NFL. Like, my wife was already into yoga, she was way ahead of her time, and she's like, "Hey, it'll help your back." But I resisted, because yoga now is really common. Like NFL teams do yoga, they do meditation, they do all kinds of mindfulness. But in the 90s, there was no yoga because that was considered wimpy. That was considered, just like this kind of like a weird way to work out. Like you only lifted weights, you did sprints, like all that. You did parachutes. So you didn't do anything like yoga. So yeah, I never did anything like that in terms of something that was, I guess you could say, like more therapeutic on my body, which would have helped my career long term. But I didn't get into yoga until after my career was over, and even then, it was after I had tried everything else, like chiropractic and so forth. But I never needed surgery. But yeah, the yoga helped a lot, which prompted me at some point to start teaching yoga, because it helped me so much with my physical injuries as an athlete to like, that was my way. I thought I could like give back, because it helped me so much, both physically and mentally. And that's what eventually drove me to start teaching.
What would your advice be to kickers, or just athletes in general? People who they go through a lot of physical contact sports. People in pain. What would your advice be to them? I imagine you would recommend yoga, but what would any advice to them, or just tips because you went through it?
Yeah, I would say, and luckily it's definitely becoming far more common now, and many teams are making it like mandatory, is bringing in some sort of mindfulness practice into the training, not as just something extra. Because I think a lot of times athletes will just look at it like extra. If they have the time, they'll do a little yoga, meditation, something that'll help them like with their mental health, but actually making it part of their weekly routine. And I think we've seen over and over again how many, if you look at like some of the top athletes of all time, they all had some sort of mindfulness component in their daily workout regimen. Like Michael Jordan, when he was with the Bulls, with the Zen master, he had to meditate all the time. Kobe Bryant always meditated. LeBron James. Oh yeah. Tom Brady he got into yoga right when he was in Boston. He was doing hot power yoga up in Boston, still does it and still swears by it. And so all these top athletes, like they probably never looked at like yoga or meditation as something extra. Like they knew they needed it. And I think a lot of times for athletes, like, we overlooked like the mental aspect, like, oh yeah, if I can squeeze it in, I'll do it. But just making it a daily practice. Because I think what athletes are starting to discover now is they need to keep their mind as healthy as possible, not only to help the performance, but also when they're off the field, because there's no separating. I think a lot of times we think, oh, this is my on-field mentality and off, but like there's no way you can separate them. So the more they make that like a part of the routine, then I think the better off they are, like while they have a career, and helps them for the after as well.
So as much as it helped your hip flexors and your physical pains, it helps you mentally as well. And with somebody who has ADD, that kind of, I imagine that would give you, that's like your outlet now, right? Like you can put all your energy and focus into that, and you can really, try to perfect that craft now. Can you speak about what it's done for you mentally?
Yeah, the mental aspect has really been like the biggest, like the most pleasant surprise for me. Because like when my football career ended, yeah, my body was in bad shape, but also my mind was in bad shape, because I just had like a lot of regret. My self-esteem, you could say, was really low, because I thought I was nothing without being an NFL football player, because I'd put that way up here. And so when I would watch NFL football games, I'd be like, oh man, I wish I was that guy. Why can't I be that guy? Why can't I still be in the league? And so, but what I discovered is when I started doing like a lot of yoga, it really helped me get some more clarity and some headspace, that it helped me move on faster from like this, how I thought my life should be. And so it helps me now, because these same things come up like in life now, where like with having a yoga practice or meditation practice, I can let go of the past with something that happens in my daily life, just like I did when I used it for when my football career ended.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so happy that you found something that you can, because like you said earlier, like with the identity, what do you call it? Like the identity problem, trying to figure out who you are after football, when football is all you've ever known, and now you have something that you can really focus on and put your energy into. That's awesome, because I know there's a lot of guys athletes in general who go through this and they don't have that after football. And it's a real problem. These guys, if they could find an outlet like you have, I think that's great because, you see, some of these players that get out of the NFL and then there's nothing for them. A lot of these universities, the way college football is set up and college sports in general, the NCAA, it's honestly disgusting. I mean, they push these players out, knowing that a lot of them are gonna leave early. They're not gonna graduate.
Mhm.
And then, they put their bodies on the line. They're retired by the age of, well, a lot of them 25.
Mhm.
Some of them play into their 30s, and Tom Brady into his 45s. But they push these players out and then they leave with nothing to fall back on and they get in trouble. It's sad. I'm really happy that you're able to find something. And I'm sure that helps, other athletes listening to this, or, young kids, something to think about. You want to graduate, you want to have a backup plan and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I think that's really all we have, but I really just, wanted to promote your book a little bit. It's a 2-year anniversary. Well, when was it 2 year? Was it a couple months ago?
July of 2020. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah, it was one of the, best books I think I've ever read.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's called The Point After. And where can you buy it at?
Yeah. So it's, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all that good stuff. It's also my website, seanconley.net. It's in most bookstores, or if it's not, they can order it. But yeah, most people just snag it online. So that's usually the quickest way.
And so you're teaching yoga. You have a studio that you need to plug or anything? I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there who seriously who could use this, in their life. And, if we could help those people out, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I teach here in Pittsburgh, but also like on my website, I have a whole bunch of like free meditations, some free yoga classes as well. So like, yeah, anywhere in the world, you can take some classes with me.
That's awesome. You do them like over Zoom and stuff?
No, they're all on demand. So they're all like pre-recorded. So you can just,
awesome.
you can just hit play, whatever you want.
Oh, that's sweet. So, yeah, I mean, when I read your book, it was very inspirational to me. I think I already told you a little bit earlier, just all the resilience and, everything you went through to get to, your ultimate goal is very inspiring. And, it was unbelievable. A lot of the book, I was like, did this really, really happen? Like, this is insane, just somebody who has so much drive to get what they want. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I don't know if I'd recommend, like when I talk to young kickers today, like, oh, should I play like in football or in high school? I'm like, yeah, you should.
So I guess I do have one more question. That reminds me. I wanted to ask Mike this too, and I think I'm going to start asking every guest from now on. When you do interviews, is there a question that you wish people would ask you more? Is there something that you'd like to tell somebody that nobody's ever asked you?
Oh, wow. A question that I wish that they would ask me that no one's ever asked me.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Let me think about that for a moment.
It doesn't even have to be football.
Oh, I was gonna say, well, if it's football, and then maybe it's just me being like a nerdy kicker. I love talking about the like the guys that nobody ever talks about, even less, and that's like the holder and the snapper. Because I think I've only been asked that once, and I actually have when I watch NFL games, I actually watch the holder and snapper more than I do the kicker, because it's such like an underappreciated and such a under the radar thing, and nobody wants to do it anymore. So a lot of colleges now, like there's kids now going from high school to college because they can just long snap. Actually, Amos Jones' son is one of those, because he knew this. He says, "Hey, son, like, be a long snapper." And nobody wants to hold anymore, too. Quarterbacks don't even want to hold. So it's like a losing art. But the whole thing has to happen in 1.2 seconds or less. Otherwise, it's blocked. And the snap has to be a perfect spiral. And then the hold, I'm amazed at these guys who get the ball down. I always was, my best holder was probably Jim Harbaugh when I was with the Colts, because every single time he got the laces out, the whole like, Finkel and Einhorn thing with the Jim Carrey movie, but like he always got the laces out. But like I'm always amazed how these holders, when you watch it like on instant replay, how they can get it, and sometimes the laces aren't out and they spin it perfectly. Because it's the craziest thing is like when they spin that football, if they have their finger on the top of the football too hard, it won't spin at all. But if they have the top finger on it too soft, when they spin it, the ball will fall over. It's just fascinating. At least to me, it is how that part of the battery works so smooth. And when people watch it, they oh wow, you missed a kick. But you know the hold and the snap, man, they have to be perfect and they have to be quick. And it's just for me, it's just really fun to watch and appreciate.
Who was your holder and snapper at Pitt?
John Ryan, who was a backup quarterback. Yeah, John Ryan. Little story about him. He broke all of Bernie Kosar's records at Boardman High School.
Yeah.
When he came in, there was so much pressure on him because everyone's like, this is the guy who broke all of Bernie Kosar's records. But he was an amazing holder.
Another local guy. That's funny you said that. That's why I noticed the name immediately. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Boardman High. I mean, there's so many, Youngstown, Ohio. Like, I mean, there's so many legends that have come out of there.
So many. I mean, yeah, the list goes on. I could start naming them, but I won't. That's annoying. but
yeah, Bernie Kosar, who when I was a Browns fan growing up, he was the man. And, you know, actually, I don't know why, for whatever reason, on my Twitter feed yesterday, somebody shared some videos of Bernie Kosar who threw the ball. Like, when I watch him throw the ball, I'm like, how the hell did he go as far as he did throwing the ball the way he did? And he was amazing. You know, I mean, with his sidearm. Yep. But yeah, Bernie Kosar.
That's great. Yeah, you played with some absolute legends. That's all. I mean, you played with Curtis Martin too, right? At Pitt, 92.
Yeah. Curtis Smart was there when I was at Pitt, and Curtis is another guy who never started playing football till he was junior year in high school. And the best story, you can hear him tell his whole story. It's so long. I don't know if we're running out of time here, but if you type in like his Hall of Fame speech that he gave, the reason why he started playing football is his gym teacher, because he was worried about him. He had a couple family members killed, and the gym teacher said, hey, because he saw him in gym, he knew he was an amazing athlete. Said, hey, why don't you join the football team? It's going to really help you, like, you know, with everything. And so he joins the football team. And yeah, I think, like I said, I think this is junior year. Next thing you know, at like Pitt and Notre Dame are like, you know, knocking down his door. And then he goes to Pitt. And one day I you know, like most kickers, I came in early because it was too cold outside, and I'm hanging out. I think I was like nursing my back injury at the time, and Curtis's locker was right next to mine. And we started talking, and he said, you know, I'm not even really all that into football. Like, I only got into it because like my gym teacher told me I should play. But, you know, I think I'm starting to like it. I'm like, oh, well, you're starting to like it. That's great. And then he gets drafted in the 3rd round. And next thing you know it, he's in the Hall of Fame. So it's just crazy. And I know a lot of it had to do with Bill Parcells. Those two like totally connected, but he was someone who wasn't quite sure that football was his thing. And then just one of the best running backs of all time.
That's unbelievable. I would have never guessed Curtis Martin didn't know if he liked football or not. That's crazy because he plays like he loved it.
Yeah, I think he just wasn't sure. And I think the reason why he wasn't sure is because I think for him, he had so much other stuff going on in his life, like, just like, to make it the next day alive, that I think he never really had a chance to like he just didn't know, and, because what was going on. And I think then, somewhere a light bulb turned on, and then the rest is history. So,
yeah. So, that's all we got. But thank you for coming on and talking to me and having this conversation. I think it was a great conversation. I learned a lot about you, and everybody listening, make sure you go buy the book. It's unbelievable. And anything else you want to say to everybody?
No, that's it. I just, thanks for everyone for listening. And I appreciate you, Evan, for reaching out and having me on. It was a great honor. I had a good time. I love talking like in football. So this is fantastic. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. We'll have to do this again sometime. It was great.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. All right. Bye-bye.